Day 8 at the UCHealth Training Center. It was a day where the Denver Broncos offense finally was able to move the ball against a very, very tough Broncos defense. Plus, one rookie tight end getting involved in the gold zone. What does that mean? What does that look like? Plus, other news and notes and standouts from day 8 of Broncos Training Camp. You get that here on today's brand new episode, Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, Broncos country? Welcome into a brand new episode, Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Thank you so much to everybody in Broncos country for making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day. You can get us on your favorite audio podcasting platforms, or you can watch us in 4K high definition on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe or that follow button so you never miss out on a day's worth of Denver Broncos news, content, and coverage from the South Stands to the end zone. I'm your host, as always, Cody Roark, senior Broncos analyst and reporter from Mile High Sports, joined alongside by my co-host, Sayre Bedinger, site expert, predominantly orange.com. Sayre, my friend, hey, day 8 was a very good day for this Broncos offense because all throughout the first half of training camp, the narrative has been the Broncos defense continues to stifle the offense and continues to limit what they're able to do. Well, you know what? The Broncos offense was able to move the ball today and capping things off in a very crucial period with a touchdown.
It's great to hear some positive updates for the offense. I think the defense kind of took a little personally, all the hype the offense was getting over the course of the offseason, and they were kind of clamping down the first week of training camp. And that's not to say, again, and we've mentioned this before, that's not to say the offense has looked bad all throughout training camp. But today, it kind of felt, based on the updates we were getting and some of the highlights that I saw, scrolling across my Twitter feed, it looked like maybe today was really the first day of Broncos training camp that the offense really had the upper hand out there. So I love hearing that. Honestly, I think Broncos fans are desperate for offense. It's like we've been walking through a desert and there's been one mirage after another of offensive success. But now here we are. We've reached the oasis, and Russell Wilson and company, I mean, they're not going against any slouches out there. That Broncos defense is very good. So it's great to hear that the offense had a big day.
Well, there was another guy, too, that stood out and had a little bit of a big day in a limited sample size here for the Broncos offense, and that is Greg Dulcich, the Broncos' third-round draft pick out of UCLA. They've been slowly working him into things. He was previously last week working off on the side field, and then he started getting involved in individual position-specific drills. And then today we got to see a little bit more inside the gold zone here for the Broncos. He had several catches, but he had one play where he caught a touchdown pass from Russell Wilson where Russ was rolling out to his right. Dulcich was covered. He backstepped, and then he ran to get himself open. So it wasn't just he sat and was covered and just accepted being covered. He found a way to get open. Russ found him for a touchdown. It was a huge thing, and I had a chance to ask Broncos head coach Nathaniel Hackett after practice just his early impressions of Greg Dulcich, especially in the red zone period. Here's what he had to say. Coach, Greg Dulcich in the red zone, you were able to get him a little bit more acclimated. What have you seen from him so far early on?
Besides the hair? Or, no, I'll tell you, he only got a couple reps again. We're trying to slowly work him in. We don't want to, throw him in there and have him running down the field all over the place and blocking. But it was great. He kind of had a couple plays. I think he caught a touchdown on the right there, which was great because, the play Russell made was awesome. And I'm going to hear it from the defense because they're going to think they sacked him, but they definitely didn't. But it was just a great feel for him. I think that's the thing with Dulcich right now is, he's understanding the playbook because he's been using so much mental time to, understand it. But then to watch him go out there and make a natural play, he was covered, kind of ran to get open, and found a sweet spot. So that was not I didn't know that was going to happen. That was just them playing ball.
And I think for the offense as well, you like to see that. Hackett mentioned it specifically. He's been taking all those mental reps that he's been working on just watching the team period when he was not physically able to participate and do much there. And now he's carrying it over, which, Sayre, to me, this answers a lot of questions. He can do it. He can fulfill that role. And also goes back to yesterday's episode. We were talking about who can replace Tim Patrick's production. Well, we can't replace it, but you know what? I think a guy like Greg Dulcich, as we saw in the red zone, as you mentioned yesterday, got off to a hot start here today. You love to see it here from the guy, as Nathaniel Hackett said, the hair.
You really do. I mean, this is shaping up to be quite an impactful draft class already. The Broncos didn't have a pick until number 64 overall, and Greg Dulcich has been, I mean, as advertised, I guess, if you could say that. I mean, he was a third round pick, but he was one of the first couple of tight ends off the board, and he's really been looking the part every time he's actually been out there on the field, whether that was at OTAs where we were talking about this Dulcich freight train that was out of control, and obviously he suffers the hamstring injury and isn't able to participate. But really, I mean, this was his first like real practice back. Like the Broncos have only been in pads a couple times. So to see him out there on Thursday in pads, getting that play in with Russell Wilson, kind of almost unscripted, like Nathaniel Hackett was describing, going out there against that top defense. Again, Greg Dulcich is going to get a lot of opportunities in this offense, and you can't help but notice he's taken advantage of just about every one of them. So I'm still buying into the stock fully of Greg Dulcich. I know we talked early in camp about Eric Sauber and his potential, to seize that tight end one job, but really what it sounds like is happening is that the Broncos have a clear group of 3 tight ends that can contribute all throughout the course of the regular season, which is great news. But Greg Dulcich, to me, even with Albert Okwuegbunam maybe being the best athlete the Broncos have at the tight end position, to me, I'm a dynasty fantasy player. I bring this up all the time. I'm drafting Greg Dulcich if I have the opportunity to do so. I feel like he could be the long-term tight end one. And even if he's splitting reps with Albert Okwuegbunam and Eric Sauber this year, I think we're going to see a lot of what, this play is representative of what we're going to see a lot of from Greg Dulcich this year. First of all, he's going to be that big play threat you've mentioned before, over 17 yards a catch at UCLA, but also that big body in the red zone, very smart, very good ability to kind of get open when the play breaks down. So I feel like those are traits that Greg Dulcich brings to the table that can really, I mean, you hate to say this because it's not 100% accurate, but replacing Tim Patrick and that production, at least divvying up those targets between different guys, I think Greg Dulcich is going to be able to take advantage of some big opportunities.
And it seems like the Broncos are embracing that approach there, getting a multitude of guys in the mix. Not only Dulcich, but Alberto, Eric Sauber. Guys are having successful days here. Day 8 at the UCHealth Training Center on Thursdays practice. But Broncos country coming up here in just a moment. We're going to talk about what the Broncos offense did specifically in Thursday's practice that allowed them to move the ball downfield and have success, and why it could be very exciting for Denver Broncos fans. But before we do that, let me tell you about the sponsor of today's episode, Locked On Broncos. It's our good friends over there at Dave. Now, level with me here. We've all been in a situation at some point in our lives where we were a little tight on cash. Maybe you can only afford to put a few gallons of gas in your tank, or you've got another save the date and you're wondering how you're going to afford a gift. That's where Dave can help. And Dave is the banking app that can help get you up to $500 instantly with extra cash. That's more money to fill your tank, to buy that wedding gift, or to catch up on bills. And you can finally tackle those expenses that have been stressing you out without any hangups. There's no interest and there is no credit check needed. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to get the financial relief that they need with extra cash. So if you're in a pinch and you need some extra help, download Dave and think of it as a helping hand from future you. Download the Dave app from the App Store right now. That's DAVE. Sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve. Member FDIC. Future you will thank you. The Broncos offense faced a very interesting situation during Thursday's practice at the UCHealth Training Center, and it was a test, and they passed with flying colors. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day, every single day, free and available everywhere you get your podcast in audio format, or whether you watch us on YouTube. Hit that subscribe notification button, turn on the bell, and also make sure you like us so you never miss out on a day's worth of Denver Broncos news, content, and coverage, because for the true fan, we have you covered every single day, all year long. Sayre, let's get to where this Broncos offense shined in a big way. Now, on the first day of padded practice, initially the day that Tim Patrick got injured, the Broncos conducted themselves in a move the ball period, kind of like a 2-minute drill, and the defense was all over them. The second full day of full pads, which what we saw on Thursday's practice, consisted of the offense moving the ball and having success. Now, here's what happened, okay? Here's the situation. The Broncos offense, they were down 10-14 with 1 minute and 41 seconds left on the game clock. They had 2 timeouts remaining, and here's how things started on the 20-yard line. Now, they got off to a little bit of a boost because Nick Bonito had jumped off sides to give the Broncos an extra 5 yards up there. He was trying to time the snap, but Russell Wilson got him with the hard cadence that we've seen. The very next play, this was a 1st and 5 play. Russell Wilson connected with Albert Okwuegbunam downfield for a 15-plus yard catch and run. He was tackled down there, and then the clock kept running. Then Russell Wilson didn't shy away from still trying to be aggressive and attempted to throw a pass downfield to a tight end once again. And then Jonas Griffith, the standout linebacker for this Broncos team, came out of nowhere and deflected the pass. This, to me, was a great thing to see because I think a lot of Broncos fans were wondering, can he cover the passing game? And his size and his speed and his length there was on display here, knocked it away. So that made it 3rd and 15 on this upcoming play because the Broncos, a couple plays before that, had a false start that backed them up there. Now, Jerry Jeudy would come up big here, okay? 3rd and 15, Russell Wilson would find him, and he would be brought down about 4 yards shy of the first down marker, which brought up a 4th and 4 situation with just under a minute left to go here and 1 timeout. And I tell you what, 4th and 4, you're trying to figure it out. What are the Broncos going to do? You know, if this was a Pat Shurmur offense, I would have been a little bit worried that there would have probably been a route thrown at 1 yard or 2 yards short of the yard mark there with 4 yards being there. But instead, Russell Wilson does something, communicates with Courtland Sutton. He throws a 20-plus yard pass down the left sideline. Courtland Sutton hauls it in coverage over Ronald Darby, tightly contested, and it moves the chains for a first down to give the Broncos some vantage point inside the red zone. And then the very next play, Russell Wilson would find Trey Quinn for a touchdown, Sayre. This was the Broncos move the ball period. They were able to do a wide variety of things. They're capping things off with the touchdown. It was great to see.
I mean, just hearing it laid out like that, it puts me in game mode. Like, I'm ready. When's the 13th? Let's go. Let's get to this game. I want to watch these boys play out there. But man, it's so exciting, and there's so much to unpack from that. You have a catch and run from Alberto. You have the big play to Courtland Sutton on 4th down, and the guts. I think that's where I want to park for a second too, just because you obviously have the guts from the quarterback to be able to dial that up. And then you have the trust between the quarterback and the wide receiver. And also just noticing that, I don't know if this was deliberately planned. We know some of this is scripted and a lot of it is live action as well. But can't help but notice that they went to the side that wasn't where Patrick Surtain was playing. So, and that's nothing against Ronald Darby, a very good player. But the Broncos dialed it up against Darby in that situation. They found a matchup with Courtland Sutton where he wasn't on being guarded by Patrick Surtain. And then Sutton, man, I can't stress this enough. We have not seen enough plays over the last 3 years where the ball is appropriately placed that Courtland Sutton can go up and make a play on it. Countless times last year, he was wide open down the field. And one of 2 things happened most of the time. Either he was interfered with, and those were his most impactful plays in the game, or the ball was thrown way out in front of him or way behind him, so he couldn't make a play on it. Having a quarterback that can put the ball in a spot for Courtland Sutton to go up and make a play and be that 60-40 guy. Remember, that was kind of his nickname early on, was 60-40, because he's so much better than just a 50-50 ball receiver. He's got the advantage in jump ball situations. To have a quarterback that can put the ball in his area code where he can go get it, that's going to be a huge difference maker for the Denver Broncos in 2022 because we haven't seen it over the last 2 years.
And you nailed it perfectly. And here's one thing I really want to touch on with Russell Wilson. When I just watch him during the quarterback specific drills, like they get together with the wide receivers and throw routes on air, and they do different things, tracking the football. Russell Wilson, especially on that play to Courtland Sutton on the 4th and 4, his ball placement, Sayre, I mean, it is so consistent. It is so good. We haven't seen that in Denver in quite some time, because usually you're getting either a too high pass or a pass that's too low or too behind you, as you mentioned, stuff that Courtland Sutton and these receivers have been dealing with. When I look at Russell Wilson throw the ball and when it's in game simulation type situations, Russell Wilson is on. Like, he is on the money. He is laser focused, and his mechanics from the quarterback position are impeccable. Like, this is a guy that we talk about Peyton Manning being a perfectionist. The way I watched Russell Wilson kind of prepare and go through his throws, knowing what route he's going to throw, understanding this is the trajectory I need to throw it. Here's how it alters if I have coverage in my face and I have to step up in the pocket and deliver it. He is so like intricate, like detail is ridiculous here when it comes to what Russell Wilson does there. I do want to mention that. But even let's touch on another thing. This wasn't in the move the ball period, but this was just during the Broncos offensive team period. They were working a little bit in the red zone. And here's the thing with the wide receiver rotation. They're mixing in everybody. It doesn't matter if Jeudy, Courtland, Sutton on the field. They're mixing in Trey Quinn, Seth Williams, Brandon Johnson, and even Montrell Washington. And Montrell in the red zone period would also haul in a touchdown pass from Russell Wilson. So for him, the rookie out of Stanford University continues to impress and just flash off the charts so far through the first part of training camp. And I think it's safe to say he's a roster lock, and he's a guy that stands out. And I said it earlier too. Keep an eye on Caden Davis, the wide receiver, the guy who's the first one out there every single day outside of the bird that I happen to cover every morning at the UCHealth Training Center. Caden Davis is making plays. Now, he didn't really have any opportunities to make some plays during Thursday's practice, but consistently the Broncos have been going his way. I do want to highlight one thing here before we can, continue on and we get to our next topic of discussion. I want to get to the second team offense here in the move the ball period led by Josh Johnson. First play, 15-yard catch and run to Brandon Johnson, a big play, tightly contested coverage, was able to get up the field there. Johnson threw a quick out as well the next play to Seth Williams, another guy that we said is going to be tasked with stepping up there. And then there was also another pass attempt to Brandon Johnson, which Michael Ojimudi had very tight coverage. That was on a 2nd and 3 play. And then there was another play where they called him down. It would have been a sack. I think it was Baron Browning or Jonathan Kongba. One of these guys was able to get after Josh Johnson. And so it was a 4th and 3 play. Josh Johnson was dialing up a pass to Trey Quinn, and Trey Quinn caught it. Jaquan McMillan came out of nowhere, got his hands on it, and knocked it away. And that was it. That ended that move the ball period for the second team offense. So Jaquan McMillan, a guy who's been playing inside the slot for the Broncos defense, is a guy to keep an eye on here, especially as we approach next week's preseason game. But Sayre, you know what? There's some other news and notes we have to talk about, some injury updates, and also some other guys that are standing out and making plays on Thursday's practice at the UCHealth Training Center. We're going to get to that coming up here in just a moment. But before we do that, let me tell you about BetOnline.net, the sponsor of today's episode, Locked On Broncos. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. You can find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for all the odds, lines, and games. You can find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They have you covered. So head to betonline.net here today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. The Broncos brought in a local high school legend to be on their roster after the injury to Demarie Crockett. What did he look like? Plus a brand new wide receiver who made a tremendous play in his first day wearing the orange and blue. Thank you so much for making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day every single day on your favorite podcast provider. Also here on YouTube. Thank you so much, everybody in Broncos country. Sayre, my friend, let's talk about some news and notes, some standouts here at practice. First off, let's get through injuries. No Caden Stearns during Thursday's practice. Nathaniel Hackett had mentioned that he had gotten a hip injection, and they expect him to practice on Saturday, where it will be full pads, high intensity. Friday's practice here today is not expected to be high intensity, so it gives him a chance to do that. DJ Jones, they're hoping for some good news here in the next couple of days. They've given him some rest as he continues to deal with a little bit of a back injury. Kareem Jackson got a Veterans Day off. Tyree Cleveland, when he got hit in the throat, has a cartilage injury. And Mike Kliss, 9 News Insider, our good friend Mike, had reported he may be out for 4 to 6 weeks with that. And the team wanted to be very cautious with it, considering the uniqueness of the injury. But no Kendall Hinton on Thursday as well. We didn't see him out there as he continues to deal with a little bit of a knee injury. And then PJ Locke towards the end of practice kind of caught legs with somebody on a downfield pass, was able to walk off on his own power. So that is something to keep an eye on. J.R. Reed, safety, who had made a play, forced an interception early on in practice, had left the field and was escorted off. So we'll see what happens there. We'll get an injury update on him. But Sayre, outside of that, let's get to some standouts. Who's the first guy?
Definitely. First of all, hate to hear any injuries, but it sounds like guys are on the mend, which is good news. Damari Mathis, the rookie defensive back, we brought him up a number of times. The Broncos released the highlight of his interception at day 8 of training camp, and man, It was beautiful. I mean, a diving, almost fully extended diving interception to cut off the receiver, and just a beautiful play. And you saw all the cornerbacks come and surround him and celebrate with him after that play. But it sounds like, man, it sounds like that guy's been having a really good camp, especially as the pads have come on. I've seen his name pop up more and more, which speaks to his physicality and aggressiveness at the cornerback position. Certainly a player that's going to be factoring into the defensive back rotation. And then you made a note, Cody, on Twitter about Jeudy and a particular run fit that he had, and just the speed at which he's playing right now.
Yeah, Josie looks like he's playing on another level right now. Now, granted, it's early in training camp, but it's a very promising sign. And we know, look, last year in the little bit of sample size that we saw, Josie was all over the place through the first 2 weeks. Then he suffered the freak pectoral injury. But Josie Jewell, there was this one play where it was an outside run play, and I saw him shoot the gap at an angle so quickly where he would have blown it up. It would have been a major tackle for a loss in the backfield, probably like -3 or 4 yards there. That's how fast Josie was. His closing speed was there. And it helps when you have guys on the edge who maintain it to where the running back can't get to the outside when you're trying to run at Baron Browning, Bradley Chubb, or Nick Beneal. These guys are doing a really good job hedging the outside. And when you have a linebacker who can play and flow the way that Jonas Griffith does, or even like Josie Jewell, this is exciting for the Broncos defense. He was a standout in Thursday's practice at training camp. But there was some other talk around training camp here, Sayre. There was a local high school legend who played at Pomona, Max Borgi, not to mention he also played at Washington State, where he's able to kind of play in the air raid offense for them initially. And then now he finally is brought to the roster, had a tryout during mini camp, but they didn't have enough roster spots at the time. And now he was here at practice with the injury to Demaria Crockett.
Yeah, I thought that was a great note too from Nathaniel Hackett to say, look, they really liked him initially. They just didn't have the numbers to be able to fit him on the team. And of course, you hate to see an injury pave the way for anything, but it does pave the way for an opportunity here. And to me, the running back spot is going to be as fascinating as any position throughout the preseason, and for two reasons. Number one, because we're barely going to see Javonte Williams play, and number two, because we're barely going to see Melvin Gordon play. I think that those guys aren't going to get a lot of preseason reps because they really don't need them, and the Broncos can't really risk one of those guys getting hurt out there. So I think it's going to be a lot of Mike Boone, a lot of Tyreek McAllister, and now a lot of Max Borgi, which he fits really well in this wide zone scheme. His scouting report says one cut guy. And definitely he's got the body build for it, the explosiveness. He's about 5'9", 210 pounds. And Cody, he has an elite 1.53 10-yard split. So we know that when he plants his foot in the ground, he can go. So I like Max Borgi. I like that pickup a lot. I mean, he went to high school in Colorado. Apparently, according to one article that I read, he got confused as Christian McCaffrey when he was touring the Stanford campus a few years back before he ended up playing for Mike Leach at Washington State. So interesting fact there in case that ever comes up for anybody. But I like the pickup of Darius Shepherd. Initially, I will admit I was not overly impressed by the tryout list the Broncos released, or that was released through the NFL. But then you take a deeper look at some of these guys and you kind of see Darius Shepherd, the wide receiver that was brought in, a lot of familiarity with Nathaniel Hackett. And the more I dug on him, the more I found it interesting. He actually 2 times he cracked the Green Bay Packers 53-man roster as an undrafted free agent out of North Dakota State. Only played 14 games for them, but was really somebody that I think impressed that coaching staff. That a couple of guys, obviously Hackett, Justin Houghton, now in Denver. He was impressive enough to the point that they thought of him when they needed help at the wide receiver position. And he had an interesting fact after camp that he actually texted or called or reached out to Nathaniel Hackett when he was hired by the Broncos. So they must be good buddies. And I know one of the things that we loved about Hackett when he was hired, Cody, and I think one of the things that I think made such an impression on me is when he talked about how your practice squad guys 1 through 90, every guy, it doesn't matter if you're number 1 or number 90, you're going to get an opportunity. And Darius Shepherd is kind of the quintessential example of that. He got an opportunity in Green Bay and made the team.
Well, he also had an opportunity here today in Thursday's practice. His first attempt, his first target was a 60-yard bomb from Josh Johnson where he hauled it in and scored a touchdown during the team period. It's like, oh, hey, welcome to Denver. So now he's got that speed dynamic because Nathaniel Hackett mentioned it after practice. There's a little bit of an option route where based on how the coverage was, he could either sit or he could go. And he said, just knowing Darius, he chose to go, and Josh Johnson found him. It was a beautiful ball. It was a good day here for Josh Johnson, who, in my opinion, I felt like he needed a really good day to get the offense moving, at least with the second team. And Darius Shepherd, hey, you know what? Might be a new favorite target for Josh Johnson that we could see in the NFL preseason beginning next week. The Dallas Cowboys will come to town next Thursday for a joint training camp practice, and then they play on Saturday in the first preseason action. But Broncos country, thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode, Locked On Broncos, and your favorite podcast provider, or whether you're watching on YouTube, we have you covered every single day, all year long, with all the Denver Broncos news, content, coverage that you need. Sayre, Bedinger, and myself, we'll be back for Saturday's practice at the UCHealth Training Center. Full pads. We'll have the recap and more for you here, Locked On Broncos.